He's just a douche. He's just a fucking obnoxious little man.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Drama, Just Movies, and we are back with another review. This time, we are reviewing none other than Marc Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man. For anyone who does not know, currently they are doing a re-release of all of the Spider-Man movies and the live-action Spider-Man movies made by Sony. We've done reviews for the Sam Raimi movies. Now we are on to the two Marc Webb movies, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man. I am one of your hosts. My name is Cameron Kelly Smith, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague, the man himself.
No!
That's it. Come on. So as I said, guys, we are here to review Marc Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man. Obviously, to set a little bit of context, this came out in 2012, I believe, and obviously we were a few years removed from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man at that point. I don't remember fully how it was like as in 2012 for me. I was a bit younger at the time. But I do remember hearing, I think a couple years before that obviously they had decided not to move forward with Spider-Man 4, and so I think there was a lot of intrigue going into The Amazing Spider-Man as to what style it's going to be, how it's going to compare to the Sam Raimi movies. And obviously you and I saw this movie in 2012. We actually didn't even know each other then, but now here we are, more than a decade removed, and we have just seen The Amazing Spider-Man again for the first time since 2012, at least for me. So here's the question. Was it better than Spider-Man 3? And that's a real question. No?
No. I really disliked it. I remember the first time I watched it, I actually enjoyed it. I don't know why now. But rewatching it, especially so close to like watching the Sam Raimi trilogy, I really disliked the film. I really hated the portrayal of what they did, the characterization, sorry, of Peter Parker. And I'll get into that one. So I think Spider-Man 3 is at least, while it's cringy at points, it's at least fun cringy. Like you can laugh at the dancing down the street stuff. And it has some really good points as well with the Venom and all. Watch our review of Spider-Man 3.
Little plug.
Well, the link will be down there. But yeah, it's not bad. It's no.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you said that is actually, for me, it's a fascinating takeaway, and we had this discussion as well. When I watched this movie in 2012, I thought it was a pretty good film. And I actually really enjoyed it at the time. And I felt that the direction they were going with this new Spider-Man was promising. It was different. And I was really intrigued to see where they were going to go with it. And I had held, similarly to you, that belief from 2012 up until now, 2024, that The Amazing Spider-Man, that was a good movie. It wasn't the greatest thing ever, but no, that was a good movie. And up until this point, when we've been doing our rewatches, like if I had to rank the Amazing Spider-Man movies, or the Spider-Man movies, period, for me, live action, I would have had, I'm not going to give my whole ranking, but I would have had The Amazing Spider-Man over Spider-Man 1, Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1, and I would have had it over Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3. And this is what's amazing about life and hindsight and the way that your eye changes, that your attention changes. After watching The Amazing Spider-Man with you, I thought this movie was pretty crap, if I'm being honest with you. I felt like the moments when you have Andrew Garfield in the Spider-Man costume, those were fun. They did set up some interesting things, which I think was interesting to see where we were going to go. Tonally, it felt quite different to the Sam Raimi movies. Aesthetically, it was different, and I appreciated that. I think that you had to do that. You just came off of a trilogy of those movies, so it had to be different.
Hmm.
But if I'm being honest with you, this movie was far more boring than I remembered it to be. It's a long time before we catch Andrew in the Spider-Man suit. And that hour is, or however long it was, and you're going to hit us with some
Oh,
statistics.
I'm getting into that.
Yeah, because that time period wasn't exactly compelling.
Yeah. So I've actually gone through um both films and just looked at the timings when certain beats happen. So the bite in the first, in the Sam Raimi one, happens at 10 minutes, pretty much exactly at 10 minutes. So very early on.
Very quick.
Um, Whereas in The Amazing Spider-Man, it's at 21:43.
Whew.
So it takes twice as long for the bite.
Yeah.
Then we get the first costume. In the original one, we get it at 37 minutes, roughly.
Mhm.
And then in this one, Amazing Spider-Man, we get it at 51 minutes.
Damn.
So it takes a lot longer just for him
Yeah.
to into that the
It was
first.
a real drag.
What's interesting is they kind of flip when Uncle Ben dies. So he gets in Andrew Garfield Spider-Man gets into the costume, the first costume first, then Uncle Ben dies, which I thought was really weird. But so Uncle Ben dies kind of at the same time in both, like 42 for the Raimi ones,
Yeah.
44 for the Andrew Garfield ones. And then what's even more interesting is in the Raimi Spider-Man, he gets the full costume. We see him the first time in the full costume at 53 minutes, roughly.
Mhm.
Now, we both thought it takes ages for him to put on the costume in this one, in Amazing Spider-Man. It's actually not much sooner, but sooner. He puts it on at like 52 minutes. So
Okay.
actually just a little bit earlier in the timeline.
Yeah.
I think the problem is the bite. I think the problem is the bite, and then obviously like the first look at the first costume.
Mm.
It takes forever until like the Spider-Man part of the story gets going. We get a lot of like, the introduction with the spy stuff and the his parents. And I didn't care as much for that. It was maybe an interesting idea for like a different story, for like a spy story, I suppose.
Mm.
But I don't think it worked for a Spider-Man story because we want to see Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It was Spider-Man. So I see your comment on it being a little bit boring at the beginning.
Yeah, like it felt like a drag, and that's the thing. Like, I think this goes to a big talking point, which is the origin story, right? I think that in 2024 we are semi done with origin stories, and I think we are seeing that being reflected in some of the superhero movies that are coming out, whether it be the Batman, Spider-Man Homecoming, whether it be the Fantastic Four that comes out next year, James Gunn's Superman that comes out next year, them taking these stories of characters that you've seen already, that you're familiar with, and going, okay, we don't need an origin story here. Like, people know they've seen the origin story, whether it be through a game or an animated show or a TV show or a film or comic book. You've seen the origin story. This is a movie, especially in hindsight, where I felt like that origin story did not need to be retold. Now, obviously, hindsight's 2020. I can understand them going, well, you know what? We just had this trilogy of the Sam Raimi movies. We're about to introduce a new Spider-Man. The audience needs to grow with this new Spider-Man, so we feel like we should start again from the beginning and find a new way to retell that origin story. However, now in hindsight, I don't feel like it was the best option. One is because that origin story, I don't feel like they did anything necessarily to change it. Not to say it had to be changed, but it's the exact same origin story, and it wasn't as compelling either, and it was very slow paced. And you spend all of this time to then, or what feels like all of this time, to your point with the statistics, it feels like a year and a half before you actually get to the real meat and to actually see Spidey. And even onto the spy point, obviously to dart onto another point quickly. That was one of the elements of this movie that I actually was interested in, planting those seeds as to what what is this? How does this link into the story? Okay, so Peter's parents, the impression I got is that it was ultimately Oscorp or Norman Osborn that was potentially responsible for their deaths, and that, through Richard's affiliation with Curt Connors and what they were working on, that, seemingly something didn't go too right there, and it caused Richard to have to flee, and, they were ultimately murdered. And I was quite intrigued as to where that story was going to go and how it did affect Peter. Obviously, when we get to our Amazing Spider-Man 2 review, we can probably delve into that a little bit more as to where potentially that was going. However, yeah, it just was a drag. Now, don't get me wrong, there were things about this movie that I did enjoy. I felt like, and I have held this opinion from the moment this movie came out, I feel that Andrew Garfield is such an incredible performer, and I personally really like him as Spider-Man. Now, I know that we're going to have differing opinions in terms of whether we liked him as Spider-Man or if we liked him as Peter Parker, or didn't like him as Spidey or didn't like him as Peter Parker. But I always felt that he was a great Spider-Man, and I would have loved to have seen where maybe he could have gone with a bit of a better script and a better direction from Sony. But I felt like the chemistry between him, and a huge shout out to Emma Stone, who's just tremendous. Their chemistry was just off the chain, absolutely incredible. And I love that chemistry between them and that relationship between them. I also was relatively intrigued with Curt Connors as well. At that point, that was the first time we'd ever seen the Lizard in live action, and I liked where they were kind of going. Some of those scenes were quite really fun between them. However, overall, a bit of a miss. But as I said, I feel like Andrew Garfield still stands tall as a Spider-Man. What say you?
Let me. So I love Andrew Garfield. I think he's an amazing actor. I love the stuff he's been doing, like Social Network, Tick Tick Boom. He's very physical as well, and I love how in the moment he seems with everything he does. But here's the thing: he's not my Peter Parker.
We love Toby.
We do. I think going back to our Spider-Man 1 review, link in the description, where I was kind of shitting on Tobey Maguire's appearance, I think. Sorry, Toby. But Tobey Maguire has that kind of nerdy look, right? You can imagine him struggling to ask a girl out or not being asked out by a girl. Then you look at Andrew Garfield, especially at that time, right? And with his hair like up and coiffed and all beautiful and shit. But I think, and he's on a skateboard as well, he rides a skateboard, he wears like cool hoodies and stuff, and you're like, that's not really a nerd. It's like he had the confidence as well. He seemed very confident even before he gets the spider bite. So he didn't at all seem like a person who would struggle to pick up a girl or struggle to get picked up by a girl, or like that girls would be interested in. I also didn't like that he was a dick for most of the time, even before, again, the spider bite. He like stole someone's identity at the beginning and like weaseled his way into a tour. Like when we see him, he gets bitten by the spider, and we see him after that in the subway, right? He jumps up, and then he goes like touches a woman's blouse, rips that blouse off.
Accidentally.
Well, still. And when the guys who are with her, when they go at him, he fights them. He like kicks them, punches them, instead of taking a step back and saying, sorry, guys, this was an accident. I apologize. Oh,
but he did apologize
afterwards.
No, when he accidentally ripped off, the woman's blouse, he did apologize. But if a guy tries to hit you, sometimes you gotta defend yourself, and that's what he did. He's Spider-Man. Well, not at that point, but on the road too. But go on.
But there were little things like that where he's a little bit more, again, confident and a little bit more of a douche. Like when he has his powers and they're on the basketball courts and he humiliates Flash Thompson as well. we get with Toby Spider-Man as well, that little scene where Flash Thompson attacks him, and he like at first evades the punches with his spider sense, and then only at the end, when after a little bit of a fight, um he punches back. He grabs his arm, twists it a bit, and punches back. His first reaction is, "Oh, cool! I have powers now, and I can use them." But then everybody else is uh, basically reacting like, "Peter, you're a freak," and even Mary Jane is looking like him, like, "What have you done?" And that turns it around, and he suddenly feels very ashamed of what he's done. Whereas here, Andrew Garfield, he humiliates Flash Thompson, um, pretty much unprovoked, if I remember correctly. He breaks the basketball backboard, and we see him like looking up a little bit, like, "Oh shit, what happened there?" Like, "Oops." But then we don't get a reaction from anybody else. And the next thing, he's like in the principal's office, but he doesn't. We don't get that moment of him going, "Maybe I shouldn't choose this path of where I want to go in my life." So yeah, he's just a douche. He's just a fucking obnoxious little man, and it's hard to like root for a guy like that who's been introduced like that.
Yeah, I think this is the thing because I think I remember us having this conversation because I saw it slightly differently in the sense where I see if you're looking at it through the lens of how Peter Parker as the character is traditionally written and things that really just work for the character and what makes him a more likable character. And I think that through that lens, at least if I'm looking at it through that lens, then I do understand where you're coming from. There is a way in which, not to compare to the Sam Raimi movies, but why not? You
Yeah.
know, the way that that is done in the first movie there is much more sincere, and it does make you root for Peter and feel sorry for Peter. However, I also look at it in a sense of like you are led to believe that this is someone that has been bullied and made fun of for his whole life. He has a lot of trauma because his parents uprooted and left. He never understood why. Now he's getting a bit of a glimpse into maybe what could have happened with Curt Connors. And so I look at this guy who has been bullied for a considerable amount of his life. He's also dealing with a lot of trauma. To me, to then go and confront your bully and make fun of him because you now have powers, to me, that makes sense. Now, don't get me wrong, it making sense and then it working in terms of the structure of a story and a Spider-Man story, yes, they are two different things, but it didn't it didn't bother me as much. However, I do agree that this movie did feel a bit darker tonally in some ways. This did to me feel like in some ways, as I said, a Spider-Man that does have trauma, who was bullied. And don't get me wrong, the character of Spider-Man does have trauma. However, this was interesting in the sense where it did feel more so like did feel like a darker Peter Parker in a way. And yeah, that was an interesting take. I do wonder, however, how much of this is you will not wonder. I think a lot of this is probably should be more blame should be put on the script rather than the performers, but we're not blaming the performers. However, yeah, very interesting. I mean, when he did get the suit though, what was your thoughts once he did put the suit on? The real suit.
I did really enjoy that first shot we got of a full shot of the suit. We get a shot where he swings, and then he swings towards a building, and it's a reflective surface.
Yeah.
And so the first shot we get of him in the full suit is him basically looking at himself, and it's the reflection of him, which I thought was a great introduction.
I felt like once he put on the suit and you have the interaction between him and Curt Connors, and all from that leading up to the end, I thought was really interesting. Or at least it was a bit more compelling. I did like the fight scenes between his Spidey and the Lizard; those were fun. Obviously, I understand that. When you look at Curt Connors, the whole thing is that him and Richard Parker felt like they were working on something here, the cross species genetics thing. They felt like, they were working on something here that could really benefit and help people, maybe reverse, for example, symptoms of dementia or something like that he refers to. And so I understand, the motivation behind his character being that, what he's doing is right. However, at the same time, it's kind of similar to Norman Osborn in the Sam Raimi movies, where it's like, by taking this, experimenting on himself, some of those symptoms involve seemingly anger and insanity. And so, that's part of it too. However, yeah, overall, I would say that it's a decent movie, but I definitely don't remember it as fondly as I once did. A good shout out, however, for the end. I did appreciate that final scene between Spider-Man and Captain Stacy, where he asks him, he promises the captain to stay away from Gwen. However, obviously, he decides very quickly not to do that. But I personally like that because it definitely preempts what happens next in Spider-Man 2. And once again, the classic line you said that he always chooses misery, and he does.
No, he doesn't. And I want to get into that before we wrap this up. He doesn't choose. That's another part I really hated with the characterization of Peter / Spider-Man. He doesn't choose misery, and there is no misery for him. Like from throughout the film, like, he doesn't give anything up. There is no cost to any of this. Yes, he loses his uncle, but I think like they weren't that close anyway. But he at the end he gets the girl. His schoolwork doesn't suffer, if I remember correctly, after he gets his powers and after he Spider-Man's a bit. So there is no misery, no cost to that power, no
But
choice.
he does make a choice that eventually does lead to ultimate misery.
In the
Because
second one.
yeah,
In the second one, not in this
you
one.
just mean in this movie.
Yeah. So because we officially haven't seen the second one yet.
That's true.
Um,
That's
so
true. That's true.
Yeah, in this one, there's nothing. It's just a happy life for him, which again goes back to this idea that he's just a little bit too perfect, as Peter Parker. And I think Spider-Man needs that misery, because it has to be that with great power comes great responsibility. It has to be that choice of giving up something in order to help people. That selflessness, that Peter has.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree, man. And now I'm very intrigued to see how we find our rewatch of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which will be next for us. But before we give our little icy review out of 10, any final thoughts, or are we good to go?
I think I'm ready for this. Bring
All
on the
right,
ice.
well, I'll chuck it over to you first. For anyone who doesn't know, we give our review score out of 10. However, we do it in the form of ices, or for you guys in America, slushies, Tango Ice Blast, Vimto Ice Blast, whatever it may be, but we'll call them ices. So we do our little icy score out of 10. So The Amazing Spider-Man, how many ices out of 10?
I will give this. I think the machine is broken and it can only muster up 3 ices. 3 ices with a little bit of like dregs from the cleaning fluid.
Oh, God.
I think that's yeah. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for the character. I didn't care for the problems he goes through, if there are any. So 3.
Damn. Well, I am gonna go for this one. I'm gonna go with 5 ices out of 10. And I think it's because I can get some enjoyment from this movie. Why? Because it's Spider-Man. So I'm a little bit biased in that sense. But yeah, I think I was gonna go 6 initially. I was gonna be generous, but then I remembered what I saw. And so I had to go down by 1 icy. I can't be too biased. So 5 ices out of 10. For anyone who hasn't seen this movie, I'm not gonna say don't watch it. I think if you're a Spider-Man fan and you hadn't seen this movie, you should, because why not? To see what came before, you know, the beauty of Tom Holland for all you new people out there that only maybe started watching Spider-Man when Tom Holland came around. So I would definitely advise it. Or for anyone who was around, like you and I, for when Amazing Spider-Man came out, you know, give it a rewatch. See what you think. You might think of it more highly than we did. But so we're going 3 ICs out of 10 for you, and we're going 5 ICs out of 10 for me. So that will do it. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to our review of The Amazing Spider-Man. Next will be The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which we very much so look forward to delving into. It's going to be an absolute blast. Once again, thank you for tuning into our channel. If you like what we do here, please like, subscribe, comment, please share our videos. We really do appreciate it. We're just 2 movie-loving friends who just love to have a chat about movies, and we love to have chats with other people about movies as well. So please do get involved, and we really will very much so appreciate that. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. I am Cameron Kelly Smith, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague.
Hello.
That's right. That one had a nice little ill to it.
Yeah, I need to.
It's all right. I mean, that's our cue. That's our cue. Thank you, everybody. We are No Drama, Just Movies, and we will see you very, very soon. Take care, guys.